The old blood.
The old blood.
Wolfenstein.
Old blood.
I'm not even touching the Fuschenschachtel.
Alright. Sound check. Let's see if it
In den
works. If not,
trüben Katakomben verbringt sich großes Licht. Unlock perks to improve your skills and abilities. I think my voice is okay,
yeah?
but my fake German accent is terrible.
I was gonna say that your made-up German accent is not that
It's not
great.
it's not genuine.
Yeah, even though you're German, so
Yeah,
that's
it's funny.
funny in a way. It's a bit like when I'm doing. I think I have that as well. When I try to do a forced Portuguese accent
Okay.
in English.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The French one is easy, but the forced Portuguese accent in English, not as easy.
No, this is
Speak a little bit more, just to check real quick.
just to check really quick, playing games and talking shit. Lunch break with Papu. Yes?
I'm checking. Here, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. Just check every now and again. Lunch with Papu! We're live! Yeah! Fasa is not here. Screw her. We have Dagon Calderum, aka
Lol.
Loplo, aka Vasco Ray, aka... What's your other aka? There's more.
Night
secret.
lover.
Night Lover?
I'm joking. Bad joke.
Ah, okay. Well, who knows? I'm a night lover. I love the night. It's great.
Cause I love you
yeah.
as soon as the sun goes down.
So, Lolo, you missed a bit of the story. I
What
guess you'll
story?
see it on in Wolfenstein. Come on, it's a fascinating story.
Ach so,
Yesterday with Fasai, basically,
The story
something
is
happened.
shoot the Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
There.
But not just Nazis now. The castle is now. There was an supernatural event, and now the Nazi soldiers, the SS soldiers, when you shoot them, they turn into zombies.
Cool.
And you can see here, I think there's a passage to, I will say it in French, les enfers, the hells, with the Greek connotation in it.
Die Hölle.
Feel me?
Auf
Yes.
Deutsch.
And they turn into Nazis now. So this game took a turn for the supernatural.
Cool.
Much like it was explained in the beginning.
I like
a
that.
bit like Hydra in the first Avenger movie, Captain America. They are looking for the supernatural.
Yeah, joining the two
Damn
concepts that are okay to kill. Nazis and zombies.
Yeah.
Never get enough.
Ah, shoot.
Although Nazis
Okay,
have
I'm
been
gonna
falling
restart.
behind a little bit in terms of video game.
Well, people are forgetting.
Okay to what? Okay to kill.
Okay to kill. I don't mind these ones because they have SS uniforms.
There's a lot of
So you know for
games
sure
and zombies
they're
in general.
ultra Nazis, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Not like the poor boys, like your
poor
grandpa,
boys?
right? No, your poor grandpa was fucking drafted and enlisted, and they kicked his ass to the fucking Eastern Front, right?
He couldn't finish his degree in physics. I think he was
in
just,
physics, of all things.
Of all things, he was
Of
just
all things.
In his first year of university. And my grandma was a similar story. I think she wanted to apply for medicine or biology, and she got drafted as a nurse. And yes, long story short, my grandfather was actually very lucky because he got wounded in the Russian front, and therefore when the war ended, he was not in the hospital, but in the camp to be treated as a patient. Was a What's the correct terminology?
Yeah, patient.
Wounded of war.
You're a wounded soldier. Yeah.
Wounded soldier.
Casualty.
And it was interesting because when the Allies arrived, he was already like out of combat. So he was one of the first waves of soldiers that got this makeshift passport that the Allies gave to German soldiers who had.
Which Allies? Which area was your grandpa in? The east or west?
It wasn't the Russians, I know of that.
Okay, so he's probably in the west.
He was
or
wounded
in
in
the
the
south.
Russian front, but he was moved to German territory.
Right.
It was either the I'm not entirely sure. It was not the French. Could have been the Americans, but I'm not entirely sure. But
Well, there were the French, the Americans, and the Brits, or the Commonwealth, were all doing operations together
yeah.
at the time in that area. So it's normal that it was a combination of all of that.
Yeah, he got this makeshift passport that German soldiers who had what's the word I'm looking for? Ceased and desist. No.
Cease and desist.
That had laid arms or had like officially said, okay, I'm not fighting anymore.
Oh, surrendered.
Surrendered. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. So your grandpa was in a hospital wounded, and when the Allies came, he was like, "Yeah, I surrender, I guess."
Yeah. Exactly.
I never wanted to fight in the first place.
Yeah. And I'm in a way somewhat lucky because my grandfather kept a diary, and once he died,
no way.
me and my father have gone. Well, my father most of all. We went through his diary and found out a couple of stories.
Wow. That's in a way I think it's so cool to keep a diary. Even mundane things about your life which are nothing special, other people might find, both in the future or in your family, might find incredible value in it.
Yeah.
Not to get into your grandpa's personal story or dirty secrets in his diary, but was the diary from like when he was young?
No, it was written couple of years before his death, so it was to the best of his memory.
So it's more like a memoir type of
memoir
thing. Oh, okay. So pretty thick varnish brush on that.
Probably.
Or maybe brutally honest, because he doesn't give a fuck and he's gonna die. Who knows, right? When you're that old, you're like, nah, who cares? Tough dude, your grandpa, man. Just tough people back then.
Yeah. War is never easy thing to get used to. Like, there's a very shocking story where he describes that he and his do you say colleagues in this line of work?
Yeah, you can say colleagues. Yeah.
They, after they've been defeated on a skirmish against the Russians, they had to.
What year is this? Just for perspective, do you know?
Somewhere in the 40s. They had to fake their death in the battlefield, and they had to stay. They laid in the ground, not moving, as a tank passed, crushing the bodies.
No way. I mean, I knew that was a standard thing to do during that time. But oh look, Helga. Speaking of diaries.
Lol.
This is too long. Skip it. So, your grandpa was basically lying down, trying to get. I mean, pretend that he's
to be
dead
dead, yeah.
while tank is going over his body and his friends' bodies.
Hmm. I don't
Whole
think he
time.
got
Wow.
smushed by the tanks, but
Sure, but his friends did.
yeah. Hmm.
Or people next to him did. And he had to
Exactly,
keep his
yeah.
shit together while he's
Exactly.
listening to people get crushed in agony.
Hmm.
Holy shit, man. I mean, see, we're pussies, man. We never know what it's like to sleep, have to fall asleep with having that memory.
Some people do in
Oh,
different parts
Jesus
of the world,
Christ.
right? In that
No,
sense,
but I mean, we,
Western
as in you and
society
I.
is very jaded or privileged, or
Mhm.
but yeah.
Yeah, other people have different life experiences. Oh, we have
Right
to do this
now
again,
in
damn it.
Afghan, as soon as the the dates of the departure are complete,
Mhm.
I'm kinda fearing for the Afghan civilians, especially women in general, but the Afghan
Only if
civilians
you're.
who in this past 20
Mhm.
years um improved their lives in a certain direction, and now they're probably gonna get punished for it, unfortunately.
It's not.
It's not
When it
black and
comes to
white, but
Afghanistan.
it's
No, I don't mean black and white. I
okay.
mean, when it comes to Afghanistan, you need to understand it's a very like divided tribal country. So
Sure.
you're only talking about the women or the people, the civilians or whatever,
From
who were
Kabul.
living in areas
Mm-hmm.
that were not controlled by the Taliban, but rather by the local, quote unquote, legitimate government. Thing is, that legitimate government
Or the official
has
government.
control of
Yeah.
the official government, right?
At
Has
the time.
control of super small areas of the whole country.
Yeah.
So we're not saying like, oh, now all the Afghan women are gonna be no. They're just gonna get. There's just more people now who are gonna get the same treatment as other people were already getting, and it's absolute. I agree with you that it's a tragedy for those people, and it's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
For all the people who helped Americans and stuff, and now they're gonna have to, deal with the Taliban coming to get them.
Mm-hmm.
That always happens. Doesn't matter what the country is. But Afghanistan is so fragmented that they just have control of the capital and stuff. The Taliban don't control the whole country. There's so many different like warlord tribes in that part of the world.
Yeah.
That
Sure.
it's just another tribe. You know what I mean? But it's still
the
sad.
most
It's still sad.
dominating tribe, and they
Yeah, for now.
they can be very gruesome. Like a couple of years ago, I was in a clinic for mental health reasons, and I remember meeting a young Afghani. What's the terminology here? in
Yeah,
English?
Afghan man.
Afghani young man who had fled from Afghanistan.
Yeah, he was your roommate, right?
He was my
I
roommate
remember
for,
meeting that guy, or at least saying hi.
for a while, and
Mhm.
his family, he had to flee the country because he helped the the Americans or
His
the
family helped Americans.
yeah. His father was shot down by the Taliban, gunned down literally.
Fuck.
Yeah, so he had to flee with his family. And this was back then. This was 2018.
Yeah, I mean, this whole story in that part
There's
started in
hundreds of stories like
2001.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, thousands, probably.
And now it's gonna be like as soon as quote unquote all these Western forces leave Afghanistan, it's gonna be like in a way like this is such a difficult topic to argue clearly, because in a way it shouldn't have lasted this long, right? Like the objective was what? The objective was to kill bin Laden. So as soon as bin Laden was killed, at least the official reason,
should've.
because obviously the
Yeah.
real reason was not the official reason.
No, the official
The
reason
same
is
way
keep
why
it going.
the Pentagon this year was trying to force Biden's hand into not retreating the American forces.
Yeah.
There is some other interests and agendas that are not being very transparent about it, as we always knew.
Oh, the secret intelligence community is not being transparent.
Yes.
By the way, the Americans are probably have the most transparent secret service in the world, comparing to
By
the rest of the world.
comparison, I guess.
By comparison, yeah.
And that is despite their efforts, because there's a lot of leakings
Yep.
and stuff like that, right? Whistleblowers.
But it's also in their culture to divulge things, to make things public, to let their achievements be known. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're true or not, falsified reports, whatever, they do
Mm-hmm.
say a lot.
They try to adhere to that principle as much as they can, even when they don't want to, and to
So
a
it's
certain
not really
extent.
secret.
I guess.
Yeah.
Guess that could be argued as well. But yeah, so back to the point. In a way, I think, unfortunately, whoever is president only has bad option or worse. And Biden
Yes.
decided bad instead of worse. So it's been more than 20 years, or 20 years now. And if 20 years of quote unquote, I don't know if we say the occupation or whatever, was not enough to bolster
Presence.
the government's presence, to bolster the government in Afghanistan and the military in Afghanistan, because they folded in less than 2 months. And it's also because the regions.
You don't have motivation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why would you not fold?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just have. There's plenty of videos on YouTube of what it's like to train Afghan soldiers for the Afghan army.
Yeah.
So when they say, oh, they have these many guys with all this equipment and this and that, yeah, but they have to want to fight. You understand? If they don't have that, they're screwed. That's where the Taliban always win. They're extremely motivated. Don't get me wrong, this is not to stereotype. I'm just going at it from the historical point of view. The whole Islamic thing.
Yeah, when you're
The
an
Islamic
religious
expansion started.
absolutist fundamentalist.
Yeah.
it's a strong drive
That's what
for any
started.
type of soldier. Like
Yeah, that's what started the Islamic expansion
the
in the
Crusades,
600s.
100 years ago.
No, even
centuries
before.
ago,
Yeah,
and stuff
for
like
example. But that's what started the expansion. It was
Sure.
morale.
that. Religious.
That was the real
fundamentalism.
fuel. Yeah. So you can have a fucking stick and stones. You can still win if the other side is not willing to fight. It's that simple. So that's what's going on. You know, if they're not willing to fight, I mean, who cares? And the other ones are willing to fight with mud and their tooth and claw. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you compete with that, right?
Sure.
And Afghanistan's always been that way. I don't want to say who it is,
The
but I had a
graveyard
classmate.
of empires.
Yeah,
according
sure.
to-
I had a classmate in uni because I was studying international security and law. These topics exactly. And one of our classmates was a girl from Afghanistan, and she came from a tribe that pretty much isn't anymore. And she would just tell us, guys, this whole thing of, oh, the Taliban are doing this, these people are doing that. Like, ethnic cleansing is a normal thing to do there. When I say normal, I don't mean acceptable. I mean it's a common occurrence. It's normal to show up at a village that has a certain ethnicity or certain people
And wiping them
and
out.
exterminate everybody
That is
over a
so sad.
feud that is 1,000 years long. You know, like no one even remembers why you're at war with the people on the other side of the mountain. So the country works, not the country, but this part of the world works like this. So the state,
It's
the
fucking
political
awful,
state
though.
of Afghanistan is just a bunch of people who live in the capital and people who adhere by those laws. The rest is bullshit. The Afghanistan you see on a map, on a world map, is not, you know, the sovereign state, because it is theoretically a failed sovereign state. So now, if you want to call it and this is an argument a lot of people have. If you want to take the Taliban and unify the country, and they manage to unify the country, it might be better for Afghanistan on the long term, because all this interventionism didn't allow for the country to be unified under the Taliban.
It just separated,
and it didn't allow for a political revolution after that unification. You know what I mean? And so there's an argument that a lot of scholars have, and that I'm for it, but sometimes against it too, which is let civil wars run their course, and things will stabilize, and you will save more lives on the long term. Yeah. And I think that I don't think it's for every situation, but it's definitely something to consider. But I think there's ooh, his leg got blown off.
Not every problem is a nail, and not every solution has to be a hammer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But there's certain situations where I think you should intervene, especially when it's like levée en masse, or like mob revolutions, or mob motivated ethnic cleansings, you know, that happen in the heat of a moment, like the Rwandan genocide, for example, not to go too deep into it, but it was a short-lived thing, the beginning, where it happened, and no one intervened, you know. But then in the Congo, you look at it, where the genocide kept going after it stopped in Rwanda, because political borders are just fictitious lines. The Congo's been at war for so fucking long, so many different factions, and by keeping on intervening, it sucks. And I'll make a stupid comparison. It's a really dumb comparison, okay? But when I was a kid and me and my sister would fight, my mom would separate us, slap us both. Mostly me, because, you know, boy and older. But, you know, we would both get punished.
Or reprimanded, yeah.
Reprimanded, go in your corner, privileges taken away, boom. And I remember vividly, and same goes for my sister, being upset at her because of this stupid fight. She took away my privileges. You know what I mean? And I'm even more mad at her now than I was when we started the fucking fight. Like, and my dad had a better approach to that. And it's funny because my dad's a single child, so he didn't have to deal with siblings growing up.
Okay.
And he would just say, when you saw me and my sister fighting, your brother and sister, you're going to be in each other's lives forever. You need to figure it out by yourselves. So I'm not going to get in the middle of you guys. I'm just going to tell you, make less noise, figure it out. And then he would leave the room. And me and my sister would have to figure it out. This is an extreme, simplistic example. Yeah, exactly.
As adults sometimes doesn't always work.
No. But in this case, it would work for the most part.
That's good.
It's a good thing, right? But the thing is, in the process of figuring out this conflict, there aren't people dying, you know? And then back to the whole UN and interventionism thing, intervening in civil wars. Then what do you do? Do you intervene to save the lives of the people right now who don't deserve to die? Or do you intervene for the long run? But on the long run, more people will die. Maybe. Or not. So what are you going to do? There's no good solution. It's like you said earlier, it's bad choice or worst choice or two really bad choices. And does either choice that you make end up being the good one, or is either choice the bad one? It's impossible decisions to make. I just wish that when it comes to American perception of the perception of Americans of how American politics is supposed to be done on an international level. Like, a lot of people think Jimmy Carter was a pussy because he tried to completely tone down the way the United States was involved abroad in conflict. And they thought that he wasn't good. Like, he privileged diplomacy over war. and they still gave him shit for it. And meanwhile, Reagan came after that, you know, show our muscles, the whole Rambo bullshit attitude. And that's what people wanted, and that's the image of strength.
Yeah, in the culture,
Even
in a culture where when you are in the top of the food chain in geopolitics, it's difficult to have a humble paradigm perspective, right?
Yes.
It's
But my point is that even Jimmy Carter, the most peaceful president of his generation, post World War II presidents, he still had blood on his hands.
Yeah.
He still okayed a bunch of operations in South America and in Asia, and he was the sweetest guy for the poor to this day at age 120 or however old he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and and it's also a lot of double standards. So that's my own issues.
Yeah.
Everyone else has to give up their colonies, but we are keeping American Samoa and Puerto Rico.
Hawaii?
And Hawaii has now representation, I think, in Congress at least. I don't know if they have representation in the Senate. But Hawaii is a very ugly history. Like the sugar plantation, American owners in Hawaii, like it was an independent country. It had a monarchy and everything. And
it was.
How was it?
They colonized it 16th century style, but
owners they funded a revolution to overthrow the Hawaiian monarchy, and they convinced the revolutionists to call the American military for help, for assistance. And once they got there, they're like, "Okay, folks, we're gonna take care of this for the transition." And it's been more than 100 years, and they're still in control of it.
Yeah.
It's such a asshole move.
Look, this is like history of the world in the last 1,000 years in a nutshell, okay? Or last 1,000 years. Whenever white people show up with guns telling you they're there to help, on the long run, it's gonna backfire. Trust me. Like,
I guess
if they come with just food and medicine, they are there to help you.
So,
because those are good people, period. You know, who gives a fuck what their ethnicity is. But if they bring guns, you know, mostly guns, and very little of everything else, yeah, they're not there for you, they're there for them. You know, it's just, that's what I tell people in history class. If I could go back in time, if you see white men, either kill them all on the spot and erase their existence if they show up on a boat in your island, or
that's what
engage
they
from
tried
the
to do
beginning and be
with
friendly.
Japan as well. I think that's why Japanese went a little bit...
No. Japan already had a relationship with the West, with Portugal, exclusively. I mean, when it's the first time ever.
The Dutch, after a while, because of the Portuguese missionaries...
In the 18th century, the Dutch
prohibited the Portuguese to come to Japan, but the Dutch were allowed because the Dutch didn't have religious missionaries to convert people of Japan. But yes, they just showed up in the coast of Japan with 4 military boats and started firing their cannons. Hey, look guys, we make boom.
Well, that was after they were driven away the first time. And then they sent the General Matthew
in the
Perry
context
to open fire
of Hawaii being completely overtaken by the US. No wonder that Japan went totally overboard, like, oh, we have to be careful to not being taken advantage by the foreigners and
But for Japan at the time, it was any non-Japanese person.
It
wasn't just
island mentality.
The white man.
Even before foreigners, Japanese were very difficult
To
with
this
each
day.
other. Yeah.
Like, if
Their
you meet
class
5
system, their
Japanese people from
segregation
different
system.
places and everything, you've met them all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's weird to say this and super prejudiced, okay?
Mhm.
But don't get me wrong.
Yeah, island mentality, like
In a way,
the
much
English
like
are
the
like that.
German people of, I would say, our parents' and grandparents' generation, less loud nowadays. I think we had this conversation already. It's like they all made them in a factory.
Okay.
Like, you recognize the models, you know? Like, just from the way they talk and move and do certain things, you know for a fact, wow, this is so Japan, this is so German, right?
Sure.
Things like that. Those very
Certain cliche
homogeneous
archetypes.
cultures.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, which Germany isn't anymore, or not as much as it used to be anymore.
No, it's funny. Like,
but Japan still is.
everyone
Japan still is
outside
98% Japanese.
Germany still has like a very cliche archetype idea of what a German mannerism is, but although some things still hold up, absolutely.
I think we've both met a lot of lazy Germans who show up late.
Yeah.
Stuff, haven't
Yeah,
we?
the German clock is not a thing anymore. Even
No.
the German trains. That's
That's a
long gone.
myth. The worst train experiences I've had in my life were in Germany.
Oof.
When it comes to like train schedules and
On behalf of my
cancellations
people, I
and
apologize.
it's funny
They
because
have
you say
brought
behalf
shame.
because you are literally half German.
Yes.
So it is on behalf
Yes.
of your people.
I am behalf German. I behalf. I behalf like that.
Meanwhile, in Portugal, never had an issue with trains. Very little. The
Strangely
Latin
enough,
people like that.
Portuguese trains are pretty decent.
Yeah, pretty decent. Show up on time, you know. Generally speaking, they leave
I
on
only
time, show up
know
on time.
Portuguese trains post European Union.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it was before.
Yeah, me neither. Although I think we have to also recognize the fact that population, obviously, and we are not. I mean, we the.
By the way, I
Portuguese
didn't say
folk,
anything,
Not as
but
dependent.
you have again one of those comments of when I became famous. I just figured, who gives a
I'm
shit?
already famous. I have like 20 friends, man.
Yay!
Yeah.
Can I block or report this comment?
I don't know. I should have you as a moderator on my settings. I'm gonna do that. It's
I'm
good.
gonna be drunk.
And how's the
with
audio, by the way?
power.
Still working fine, right?
What?
Audio is still good?
Is our audio still good? Let's have a look.
Should be.
Let's have a listen.
Why wouldn't it be, right?
By the way, when are we resuming Monster from? I think the sound is fine.
Oh, I don't know.
None of
We
us is
need
correcting.
where the other dude hasn't said anything in
The other
like
dude. Yes, he did.
ages.
Yesterday I was streaming
Oh, really?
with my brother. We started a
Ah.
playthrough on SWTOR.
Okay. I saw the
And,
notification this morning.
And Jack
Yeah.
came in for very briefly and commented, said hello, and I forgot if he said that he would say something today or if he would say something this week. But he should be back this week at least, I believe.
Oh, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said like 2 weeks ago, I'll be back at the end of next week. But the end of next week was
Last
a week
week.
ago. Yeah.
Well,
So
it's maybe a good sign then.
Yeah, I think it's good. I
Oh,
mean,
can
guys
you
having a good
sever
time,
that
man.
cable? Is that what you're trying to do? Okay.
Yeah. I know earlier I killed that robot by firing at the lights over and over again. I just don't know how.
Interesting. I
What if I just like
love
throw grenades at him?
the design, this World War II science fiction design that Wolfenstein goes for, because these things are absolutely things the Nazi Germans would have built if they had the opportunity to do so.
Well, it's very unfortunate that a large percentage of these things were lost. I mean, not lost, they were burned,
I don't know if
destroyed.
it's unfortunate is the word, but sure.
I think so. I think for me, it's unfortunate that a
Die
lot of the things
Wahrheit
they
der
did were
prinzession
gross
gone. Yeah.
and came at the cost of suffering and human lives. But once the research is actually done, it's still useful for the good of mankind. And it's really terrible to say this, right? Because you can't say like, oh, anything that the Nazis did was horrible, shut up.
Sure, like
Yes
there's
and
even
no,
a silver
but-
lining in the most horrific things that human nature
Yes.
has done. Like, for example,
Yeah.
unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which way you want to argue, but the experiments that were conducted in the concentration camps, a lot of that data was not thrown away. It was kept and
Yeah.
sometimes used in many industries today, including cosmetics, pharmaceutics,
Yep.
etc., medicine. Like the limitations of the human body.
Yeah. But I was talking about more the part about technology that doesn't involve any human suffering and stuff.
Okay.
Like the things, the prototypes that they were building in terms of machines and hardware, and it would have been interesting to see a lot of it.
Well, some
of
of
course, a lot of
we
those
did, 'cause exactly.
scientists went to the USSR or to the US,
USSR or the US.
and even Britain actually.
Oh yeah.
Even though, yeah, they had their own Operation Paperclip too.
Okay.
But it's still, there's a lot that was lost, you know. A lot of it was lost. But you're right when you say this is absolutely stuff that they would have gone for, and there were so many like weapons and gear that were being prepared for war and prototypes that actually never got used. And what Wolfenstein does here, the game, is along those lines. Like it respects a certain
It's a type
there's
of
a certain
science
historical
fiction that
accuracy.
feels believable.
Yes, yeah. When you know the source material, yeah. I'm sure they did their homework pretty well, just like they did with this the whole excavation thing. Except the whole castle stuff is not that well done, as I mentioned before. Like castles like this were not in Europe in the 900s. It was like 100, 200 years later that you would see them. Even if this castle Wolfenstein was built after King Otto, even if it was like rebuilt 200, 300 years later, the dungeon and stuff is not accurately done.
Speaking of empires, are you interested in Age of Empires 4? Did you see it?
Oh, there was an announcement?
trailer?
Oh, I didn't see.
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I was good with the first or old Age of Empires. I'm glad they keep doing it. It's but I think by now there are other games that are phenomenal that play with in a similar way.
I can dig that.
Oh, I think I gotta use this. Do you think I have to use that
What?
thing?
Oh,
This cart?
the wagon, the cart.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I gotta do. I gotta push it.
And you're gonna get shut down. There's
No,
a
I'm
guy
not,
right
because
there.
he's gonna turn around. Dun, dun, dun. Oh yeah, but there is a guy up there. I think you're right. Is he? No.
Can you actually push the cart?
Oh, I can't. No, I can't push the cart.
No.
Huh. Before I could. No, I can't push it. Why? Fuck.
Too bad. Alarm!
Ah, okay, cool. Ah, so when they die and turn into zombies, then
The
they
other one
just
starts
start
shooting.
the zombies. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh shit. Where's the general? Ah, he's upstairs. Fuck. Ah, I think we're supposed to sneak in all the way here and then go around and... Oh,
It's a
okay.
possibility.
Got it. I think that's what we are meant to do. But first, let's blow some shit up. Because why not? Oop. Only got one shot left. Ow.
Yeah.
And I missed.
Speaking of entertaining sci-fi, it's interesting when sci-fi is set in the past and not in the future.
Yeah, I like that. I like the steampunk stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
although it is inspired by sci-fi of the time,
Uh-huh.
like Jules Verne and all that stuff, I think
Right.
it's really cool. It's a type of sci-fi that I actually enjoy.
Mhm.
Sci-fi set in the past, yeah.
Mhm. That is something I'm kind of working on for my custom D&D campaign.
Damn it.
To see the limitations of what I can do with mechanized industrial technology. And like, so sci-fi that feels okay within the D&D context. So a lot of punk, a lot of Jules Verne.
A lot of gears.
Yeah, a lot of gears. And
If
stuff,
you want to
yeah.
do that without the whole magic thing,
Oh,
for
it's gonna
inspiration,
be
you
with the
can look.
magic thing. It has to.
Okay.
Otherwise,
No,
there's a
in terms
big
of the
game
hardware.
mechanic that gets lost. Or how did you mean?
No, I mean in terms of the hardware and mechanically speaking,
Okay.
like
Okay,
in
okay.
terms of things
Technology
you can
not
feel and
powered
touch.
by magic.
Yeah,
I get,
exactly.
I get you.
No, but you can use the
fuel
magic
source
to
and
power
stuff,
that
so.
technology.
Mm-hmm.
Even without fuel source, it can be powered by magic. But if you want to like get inspiration for designs,
Uh-huh.
look at stuff from the Renaissance,
Right.
like Da
Yeah.
Vinci and all that,
That's
because
that's
it
a
is the
classic
end of the Middle
example.
Ages.
Mhm.
So you can take inspiration from that, from realistic designs, but then powered by magic.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolute.
which is completely okay, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because D&D is very much within the. It's fantasy, but it's very like middle-aged oriented, aesthetically speaking, right?
It depends. Like some of the stuff is limit Renaissance as well, but it's
Okay.
mostly.
But Renaissance is in the Middle Ages, so
It started off. It's the end of the Middle Ages, because usually when we say Middle Ages, we mostly refer to as the Dark Ages, right? Or at least that's what
sure.
the general uh, mindset is at. Or maybe that's just me.
You're right and wrong and right.
Okay.
But I'll,
Thank
I'll
you,
I can explain that in a
Professor
second.
Papu.
Yeah, I'll explain that to you in a second.
But yeah, D&D first started off as a knockoff of Lord of the Rings board game. And initially, like they had
medieval.
terminology that was literally borrowed from Tolkien's mythology. Like the halflings, they were not called halflings before; they were actually called hobbits. But because of a copyright dispute, they had to change the name hobbit to halflings. They could keep orc because orc is older than Tolkien's book. There's actually references of orcs in Scandinavian mythology.
Northern Celtic mythology as well. Yeah.
And
Slavic.
Yeah. So yeah, it started off with that concept, sword and magic. medieval. But it has progressed and overhauled ever since. Like there's
Stupid.
even builds
Sorry.
for firearms in D&D, which is interesting. Because you got to reload
then again,
your weapons and stuff like that in the middle of
firearms were around during the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Well,
at the very end.
At the very
but
end,
in
exactly,
Asia, because the Renaissance. This is the part where I told you you're right, but you're wrong, but you're right. The people of the Renaissance were only aware of the Renaissance when they were 150 years into it. Meaning that the Renaissance ends right about when the Age of Discovery starts. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
When Europeans finally sailed again towards the Americas.
The New World.
Because let's remember that the Vikings had done it before. With a different, mindset. But so the Renaissance actually started. People weren't aware that it had started, but it started in the late 1300s.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
In Italy. Yeah. It wasn't like overnight.
When I think Renaissance,
the peak
I think
of the Renaissance,
1500s.
You think the
or
1500s, yeah. You think late 1400s, early 1500s. And you're absolutely right to do so, to think that way. But it's like when you think rock music, you think Led Zeppelin, you don't think Elvis. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There's a delay
So
until
there's
it's actually
overlapping
well established.
Yeah, okay. The components
By
for
the 70s,
figuring the context and stuff need to be put into place.
Came
I
before.
understand what you're arguing about.
So when the trend of the Renaissance arrived to
but that's
most of West Europe,
historian's perspective, I guess.
Absolutely, this is nerd shit. It's not a pop reference or pop perception of it.
Okay.
It's not the popular perception. That's why I said you're right. Technically, you're not correct, but you are correct. I mean, in practical terms. That's why I get sometimes a little bit upset when people say, "Oh, the Americans love their Renaissance fair." Dude, it's a late medieval fair. Where's
that
the
type of
Renaissance stuff in
argumentation
this? Where's
is
the
a little
architecture?
bit tricky because you can argue that the industrial age started before the industrial age started.
Yeah,
before there was machines.
exactly. Yeah,
when you
for
start
me,
arguing that way, it's okay.
For me, the industrial age started in the 1700s.
Before there was any industry or machines, okay.
Yeah. Well, there were machines, but I look at it as
but not for mass
like,
production.
No,
yeah.
exactly. The way I look at it is when mass production started, and not when it was everywhere.
In his time, like there were mechanized contraptions that were done as early as whatever. Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution for me is when started using the steam power and the big mixtige atelier, the big workshops for
workshops?
wool, and linen and cotton in the UK, and when slowly people started migrating away from
the regions towards big cities with
towards big cities or outskirts, with big workshops, The beginning of it is what I call it, the industrial era, for me. My interpretation. But now, if you compare the type of workshops that were present in the 1700s, mid 1700s, or early 1700s, to the ones in the Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, so the late 1400s, early 1500s, there isn't that much difference in the structure and in the way everything works. So for the general perception, you're more correct. The industrial age is the late 1800s. and in that sense, in that way, it makes more sense. Um, Another thing that maybe we might have to start slowly stepping away from, at least when it comes to human capital.
And so what age are we in right now, and beginning or finishing and going into or
interesting.
leaving? Professor
So I
Papu.
think it's a really, I've been asked that question before. I love answering that question. It's a perception issue, right? We will know
We will know
in the future.
in 50
In the
years
future.
from now. Okay.
I would say 100 years from now, maybe.
Oof.
But we are at a period of shift. We are at a moment in between eras right now. And so there's two things for me that make a big difference. The number one thing is not just globalization, because the world's been connected for a while now, at least over 100 years, properly. But more like, so actually, sorry, three things. First
Yes.
thing is atomic energy. Big difference. We harness the power of the sun, right? And World War II, so after World War II, right? By the way, you're asking
That
me
was a
what
big thing,
age
yeah.
of mankind and human history in general, right? Not recent times, all of it. So I think that the atomic bomb is a big one, and atomic energy is a big one. The one that people didn't really see coming, where I think it's going to be the actual divide, meaning the atomic energy and all that stuff is going to be basically the last chapter of the industrial age, you know?
Okay.
And the chapter after that is the age of information. And
Which
we're at
we're
that sweet
already-
spot, the internet. We're right in the middle of it, where the
Okay.
world is digitally connected. And the amount of information that's circulating on a daily basis is 1,000,000 times bigger than all of it prior to the existence of the internet put together. And that's insane to think about. The other thing is, the other two things, I mean, but one of them is more important, space exploration, you know. But that's why I'm saying I think the next era is going to be 100 years from now, when we properly colonize another system that is not our Earth.
Outside
Like
of
our
the
planet.
solar system, 100 years.
Outside our ecosystem that we live in,
Okay.
outside our Earth.
I
If we
think-
colonize Mars, that's going to be a big thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be like the
Before we colonize
The-
Mars,
the
we
shifts.
might be mining asteroids and stuff like that for resources.
Sure, but that's it's easier to do than it is
Sure.
to colonize Mars in a way.
Exactly.
So we're having a similar shift, like an intellectual shift and a physical shift of perception of the universe, just like in the 1500s, which was all the geniuses and the Renaissance in the 1400s, right? But also the exploration of the universe, meaning taking the boat to the unknown and expanding our perception of the universe we live in. The last one, and I think it's going to be a big one that we're not thinking about, is when we pass the point of where we fuck the planet, right?
I think some
And,
of us are thinking about it, but
No, meaning that's going to be something that's going to go in the history book. As in,
convenience always trumps consciousness.
yeah, but I'm not talking about that part. I'm talking about
Okay.
when answering the question you asked me, like what age are
What
we now?
age?
What era are we now? We're at a dividing point, and there's all these factors. So people in the future will look at, Earth, the year 2035 was the year where when we knew the planet was fucked for good.
Yeah.
In 2045, we colonized Mars. In 2050, robots got rights, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so all these things are going on together. We are in a transition period. That's for sure. Yeah. So I would say we're at the. I would call it the age of information. You know, or rediscovery, or exploration. Yeah. Not
Well,
even discovery, because these things are new.
Yeah. Okay.
Like discovering and inventing something is different. Because we are inventing robots, we're not discovering them.
I
We
will
are
call it
inventing
the age
software.
of cognitive dissonance, because despite
That's always been there, man. It's not new.
despite having so much information, people are, I don't know if I would argue more divided than ever, because maybe that's not actually true.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just because we have a wider perspective, we finally
Mhm.
understand how, uh, yeah, unsynchronized we are with our perception of reality
Mhm.
between the different bubbles of thought and whatever. Yes. Big transitions coming up ahead. Hmm.
Yep.
Before this
Ah.
century ends, this planet might not be habitable the way it is still at the moment.
No, it
Right.
won't,
Now we're back in
unfortunately.
the 90s, or yeah.
Yeah, we're back in 1991. I love this section of the game. Ooh, this is the final mission. I remember this. Or not the final mission, but one of the last missions in the original Wolfenstein game.
Isn't this the fight against Hitler?
Well, it's not Hitler over there.
No?
It's
It was a
some
similar
dude in a suit.
dungeon or room. Ah, okay, yeah.
Ah, I opened this secret door. Ta-da!
Lol.
I know, right? I love this part of the game. It's great. Ah, okay. We're gonna defeat this guy. Yeah, I think the age of information is appropriate. But I see what you mean by cognitive dissonance. But dogma will always be, and belief systems, they will always be something that humans will argue about.
And
Like we can
conflicts
be,
of understandings, yeah.
yeah, absolutely, man. We could be in the most scientifically minded era of mankind, both now or in the future. Like, I'm using the conditional here. We might be, right? There will still be people who believe in magic tricks and voodoo and like have weird religions and new religions and things that are belief based that are have no proof of concept whatsoever because people want to believe, they want the easy answer. Sometimes it's just easier to believe something than it is to try to understand it. Because when you don't understand it, what happens? You feel dumb, right? But I'm not dumb. There's a stigma about not understanding shit. Or having the humility of saying, I don't understand this, it's beyond my comprehension or my abilities, right? So people want to just believe in something that's easier to understand. Like, to give an example, a silly one, crazy conspiracy theories that everything has been planned, right? You replace the word God with they, you know? Yeah, this has been planned because they want us to do this and they want us to do that. Look, it's important not to underestimate human
The age of Aquarius and whatever.
stupidity. Don't underestimate human gullibility. Don't underestimate human incompetence. So when they are doing things, they're not doing things, they're taking advantage of it and just steering the current, you know? But they don't choose and they don't know how to control every single individual.
Sure.
Humans in a group are insanely predictable. At the individual level, way more unpredictable.
Could be
And
argued
difficult
both
to
ways. but
assess.
Yeah, okay.
And more difficult to assess. Like it's more, you have less likelihood of being right when it comes to an individual, but more likelihood to nail something if you're talking about a group of individuals.
Okay.
Including when we're talking about simpler things like free thinking and free will and determinism and all those things. Which is another a topic for another day, I guess. What do you think? What age are we, besides the age of cognitive dissonance, which is a very right now thing to think? If you put yourself in the future 200 years. So Futurama, they're in the year 3000, right? And when they talk about the 90s, they talk about the stupid ages.
It's going to be a half a century of transition, because since the end of the 90s or the beginning of this century, like, there is a transformation of paradigm, firstly because of technology, like but also like the state of geopolitics and the state of the environment. But very pretty much similar to your point of view. So by the end of this century, I feel like there's a lot of things that might change. For example, genetic engineering, like the appearance in the market of services that enable
CRISPR in a pill.
transhumanism. That will change human condition drastically. Artificial intelligence still there in the background. Are we creating an artificial life form, and will it come to the point where it needs
I don't like the word artificial intelligence.
Or
I don't like it.
Yeah. Because
you know why, right? You understand why. It's real.
Like a mimicry of intelligence and not an actual system of intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think it's purposely done that way.
Meaning.
But it is. I think that's the purpose of that terminology. It's not with the purpose of being demeaning, but with the purpose of cutting off the opportunity of not being a
machines.
Tool. Exactly.
Right.
It's the purpose of the only opportunity you have of existence is to remain as a tool, in the sense of a piece of machinery, although very intricate. And expansion.
I think it's disrespectful to the scientists who created it.
Because of running out of resources, or the problem of habitation in our own planet because of climate change.
You're talking about the infinite growth model with the very finite resources, right?
Also, but because of climate change, whatever finite resources are available now, they might be actually
not be available later. Okay.
Later, yeah.
Because we messed up the path or the way to get them.
Exactly.
Okay. I see what you mean.
And therefore, I think the main thing in space expansionism will be the fight for acquiring resources, like mining asteroids. We have, how many asteroid belts do we have? We have main belts, but we have 3 or 2 main asteroid belts in our solar system, and one of them is between Mars and Jupiter, or between Mars and Earth. And very similar to what has been explored in the series, the books and the TV series, The Expanse. Yeah, I think that nails spot on. I think that's that whole industry, economic situation of mining the asteroid belts for resources. It's very likely to happen. It makes sense, at least from where we're standing right now, and seeing where we came from. That type of future is the one that makes more sense, or seems more probable as of now. And yeah, genetic engineering, I think we already talked about this. I feel like with genetic engineering and human augmentation in general, not only through genetic engineering, but also like intelligent prosthetics and stuff like that.
So you
We might
mean
create different
being
categories.
cyborgs and things like that?
Yeah, for example, we might create
Enhanced people.
enhanced people. We might create different class of citizens, which is kind of scary to think about.
I don't like the word class
Yeah, I was trying to
of
tiptoe
citizens.
around the terminology because it has very controversial connotation. I don't
More
know
like
how
a
to.
type of people, for
Yeah,
sure.
but I think what will happen, like uh, acknowledging the type of society and systems that we usually go for, like for example with capitalism, we might end up with human augmentation on the table. We might end up doing like you can only enter this university if you have these type of hand prosthetics and these type of genetic engineering on your brain or whatever, or you can only apply for this job if you have this type
Right.
of eye prosthetic and this type of lung genetic engineering
I
process.
have a very how do you I see what you mean, but I think there's something that a lot of people forget when we talk about these topics.
Uh-huh.
So you're saying that it's like we're gonna have a new class of citizens, and the asterisk here is like inequality,
I think it's gonna
massive, right?
start this century, but it's only gonna
Um,
fully develop within the next 2 centuries.
yeah,
So
maybe. You mean
yeah,
normalize, right?
flesh out. Yeah.
Flesh out. Okay. Okay. Here's the thing. Is a counter argument type of deal
Will there be resistance
to your
reaction?
point. Oh,
Absolutely.
no, no, no. Had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It's more about telling the people who resist to wake up and get their head out of their ass.
But
There's no equality
mm-hmm.
amongst men
Mm-hmm.
because we are biologically already very different. There are people who are biologically far superior to others depending on what task you want them to perform. So, and this is,
That is an
I
iffy
don't,
subject because
no,
I
no,
know
just
what
hold
you're
on, hold
trying to
on.
argue, but it sounds like something else. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, that's what I mean. Like usually the people who are saying these things the way you are, right? A lot of them are not involved in something as simple where you can see these differences, like sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's people who have
And
a bigger inherent potential for accomplishing physical
not just
accomplishments.
bigger, Lawrence, it makes you look like you have superpowers compared to someone who doesn't.
Yes.
The
Okay.
spectrum of human beings is so large that there are. So I'm not even talking about genetically speaking alone. I'm talking about both genetics and life experience combined.
Yeah.
You have men, MEAN, men, born men, live their entire lives as men, who are 5'6" tall, so 1,70 m, 1,70 m, weigh 55 kilos or 50 kilos, never lifted a weight. Last time they worked out was in high school, could never do anything sports-wise, right? And there are people with the same intellectual capabilities as them who are world-class athletes. It's not even the same. It looks from the outside like it's not even the same species. Like we're comparing a Great Dane to a Chihuahua, almost, in a way, right? Technically the same species, but when you look at it, it's like, dude, what? It's two completely different things here. So what I'm trying to say is that I think the difference from regular people to augmented people is only freaking us out from a superficial angle, because we're just used to the biological difference already. But now this is a new kind of difference, so it's going to freak us out a little bit. I don't think it's going to change things that much. I think it's just the thing you mentioned. You're absolutely right to mention it. If you're going to go into university and they say, hey, listen, you need to be equipped like this and be like that, but we
Or
already have
job
biological
appliances,
requirements
or
like that.
Yeah, but I think it's gonna,
You know?
as time passes, it's gonna be even
Mm-hmm.
more defined,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually you're gonna have
I agree with you.
organic
Yeah.
human beings who are
Mm-hmm.
left behind because they're not able to apply
Mm-hmm.
to any meaningful function
Sure.
capability to contribute,
But
and
don't you think the same goes for
augmented
school?
human beings who are gonna have to make the decision what to do with organic human
Yeah.
beings. But that will be like maybe the result of this development, maybe in 3 centuries from now, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I agree
the
with you. I don't think 3. I think it's going to be less than that, unless
I don't know
something fucked up
because
happens.
I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth, right? There's going to be huge jumps of development and then knee-jerk reactions, as we always have when things are
Mm-hmm.
changing too fast. But the end game is going to be inevitably that situation, I think, and become quote unquote demigods, ceasing to be human
Mm,
beings and starting some sort
but
of new species,
but
which
that's
is
see that's where I don't really agree with you in that sense.
well, the
Again,
new
the
species,
argument
the
of
neo Homo sapiens, or whatever it's going to be called. It's still ways to go. Like eventually, because the argument is eventually when we go beyond this situation,
mhm.
we know that there are aspects of reality that are beyond our organic perception and understanding. For example,
Yeah.
there's sound frequencies that exist, but since our ears and brains are not equipped to, first of all,
Mhm.
catch the frequencies and second of all, process those frequencies, there's already two filters of perception that are um, unable to perceive that aspect of reality.
Yeah.
And human
It's there.
augmentation,
We don't
it's
see it.
there exactly, but we don't hear it. And we, in terms of rays and colors and stuff like that, there's also
Radiation.
exactly a lot of stuff happening that our eyes and brains are not able to pick up and process as well. But with human augmentation, those things become attainable.
Mhm.
And eventually, we're gonna reach a situation where human beings who metamorphosis through human augmentation cease to be human beings and become
Yes.
something else. And
Mm.
after they become something else, the next step is becoming something else. And in a certain way, science is what is going to enable man to reach out to God, quote unquote, if we want to take the
Mhm.
poet's approach. But in order to do so, we have, at some point or other, cease to be human and become something else.
I think we are still human. We're just not a type of human
At some
that we
point, we will
recognize
cease
and
to
know
be. We
that's
will
real, right?
transmit our consciousness to certain type of
Mhm.
avatars and bodies that are completely different, and maybe we will create something that will replace us at some point or other,
I don't like the
which
word
will.
replace, but more like, and I don't like take over either. I just
Hmm.
mean that
Sure.
the next thing. Hear this
The
argument
next
out,
thing,
okay?
yeah.
In from your perspective, right? So
Mm.
nowadays we have smartphones, we got the internet, we got machines and everything, right?
Hmm.
And would you agree that we as people, as a species, generally speaking, we are pretty much the same as we were in the Middle Ages? Meaning you can take a baby from the Middle Ages, put it into this world, raise it as one of our own,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes, but what I'm arguing is way beyond
Yeah, but
that.
hold on.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a person from the Middle Ages,
Mm-hmm.
put them in a time machine, bring them here to an NBA game, you
Mm-hmm.
think he's gonna look at that and say that that's people? With everybody with watching those giant person that big, never mind a bunch of them playing a game, and the whole crowd is acting like it's completely normal. You know what I mean?
The difference would be even greater, I feel, than that.
Oh, absolutely. But in terms of perception, for that person of the Middle Ages,
Mm-hmm.
I think that right now we are that person from the Middle Ages watching an NBA game when we're thinking about how things are going to look like in the future, whilst in the future it's going to feel like it was the natural course of things and we are still people.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
So for us, we wouldn't be human anymore, but I think in the future people would still perceive themselves as humans.
No, I think it's more like when we used for communication letters, but now we use digitalized text. It's still the same purpose, but it's fundamentally something completely different, right? Before you used ink and paper, paper that you processed from trees, and ink that you processed by liquefying minerals or whatever. And now, instead of doing that, there is towers that run on electricity that can project waves that transmit digital information. Like the purpose of the tool is still the same, which is communication, but fundamentally its essence is completely different. More in that
Right.
sense. I think after a while, and this can be argued maybe 5 centuries from now, maybe 10 centuries from now, we
Maybe
will
15 years
reach
from now.
15 years from now, not yet,
No,
it's too
I'm
soon,
kidding. I'm
but we
kidding.
will reach a point in human augmentation where it's just augmentation. There's no human anymore.
Uh,
And it's just consciousness augmentation. And eventually we become something that came from humans, and maybe at some point, I don't know if it's gonna continue the lineage of humans. Maybe at some point humans are gonna be replaced by something they create.
but that's what I mean, dude. That's exactly what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people then will still call themselves humans. It's just that the concept is so foreign to us now that we wouldn't say it's the same thing
But
anymore.
maybe they will decide to call themselves something else because they recognize that they
Yeah,
became
sure.
fundamentally something else. Like,
Yeah, just like the Homo australopithecus or whatever, like the first Lucy, right? The first
okay.
men,
Mm-hmm.
the first human species. We don't associate ourselves with that anymore, I like to think.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally, the Cro-Magnon, so Homo sapiens sapiens,
Mm-hmm.
is very different from the Neanderthal.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the differences, not at the similarities. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, nowadays, we still call our ancestor Lucy.
Mm-hmm. We humanize it from our
We still
current
humanize it and call it
perspective.
human. So I think it's not going to be much different from that in the future. We will notice the
In the
differences.
long-term future, I think it will
Yeah.
at some point, if our
Yeah.
species doesn't get extinct.
Yeah. But it might. There's a
I
good
think
chance.
I think so.
Whoa. I think this is the final boss, but I don't know what we're supposed to do.
It does have a final boss feel to it.
I think this is it. Yeah. I just know from reading stuff and videos and all that that this is an insane difficulty curve in the game. From what I read,
Oh yeah.
that the game was like pretty much smooth sailing until now, but now we're gonna suffer.
Specifically the last boss or the last level? In
Specifically the
general?
last boss. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh shit! Hi. Got more zombies.
But yeah, I got a lot of shit to say about this topic. It's definitely one of my favorite
Yeah. We
topics,
can go on for hours, I think, in this topic. something I very much like to discuss.
Mhm.
So, you like to read about like Ray Kurzweil and all those dudes, right?
I used to,
You
honestly,
used to.
it's been a while since I scratch this itch. I used to read a lot about that, but
It was more exotic 5-10 years ago, that's for sure.
I guess so.
Because it's getting more and more true. Like all these concepts are not as foreign to us anymore. Like expanding your consciousness. Now we have Neuralink
They don't
and all
have
that
this
bullshit.
revelation sort of feeling. They just have this
Yeah,
feeling of,
yeah.
this is gonna be the outcome logically.
It's easier to picture it, you know, than it was 10 years ago. Like it feels like we're already in the middle of the process. Not in the middle, but the process is starting, right?
Yeah. We can see
as
the
opposed
weeds
to it's going to start soon.
and the
I think we're
factors.
already there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna give this guy one more try, and then I'm gonna call the
Are you
stream.
supposed to shoot the glowy mouth or?
I think so. Like, shit. But I don't know why Fritz and Helmut just keep annoying me here. Okay. I think we'll leave this for the next stream. Will be the finale. It's been 81 minutes, and this has been a good conversation.
Good conversation.
Absolutely.
Last Samurai.
Yeah. I love that line. Everyone, thank you so much for keeping up with this lunch. Thank you so much to my good friend Loplo, aka Dagon Keldrum. Go to his Twitch, he's streaming again, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. Go to his chat, he knows everything, or almost everything. To put in perspective, is it fair to say that like 80% of the Star Wars knowledge you have has nothing to do with the cinematic universe?
Yes. Well, 80%.
There you go. That's how much he
it.
knows.
Yeah.
70.
I have a lot of garbage.
More than half.
Knowledge in my brain that has nothing to do with the movies.
It's not garbage. It's interesting. I like
it.
Actually, thanks to you, I know a teeny bit more about that than I know about the new trilogy. How about that?
Oh, speaking of which, you didn't talk about your Marvel opinions and your stuff like that.
We will do it tonight or tomorrow. Okay. I don't know yet. Because I have to go to the gym. And how about that? So there's a big flood going on right now. Not big flood, a little flood.
After
it's raining
lunch,
a lot.
I might hang out with my brother, though.
Okay. We shall see. And there's a big thing, a lot of water outside, and the path to go outside might be blocked by water. And I have a motorcycle. I don't have a 4x4, a Jeep, so I might actually be stuck at home with no food. But we'll see. So, in a nutshell, follow Dagon Calderum. Loplo, thank you so much for keeping up today. And yeah, check out Jack and Papu on YouTube. Yeah. Anything you missed on Twitch is gonna end up there anyway.
Cool.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.